Hey everyone, I wanted to go ahead and tackle this topic specifically as we're starting a brand new year in 2022. And one of the things that I'm hopeful for is that Capcom actually go ahead and does better, not just for Monster Hunter Rise, but the Monster Hunter franchise in general. This is something that a lot of people have been talking about, that they want to see just bigger and better things, not just, again, for Rise, but the franchise as a whole, because ultimately it feels like 2021, although it had two great games with Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter Stories 2, it does feel like it was a little bit shortchanged at the end of the day. And I think that there were a couple of misses that Capcom could learn, a couple of things, and actually try to do better going forward. So in this video, I'm not going to be ranting. If you know anything about my channel, is that I try to be as positive as possible. And actually starting out, I want to go over the things that Capcom does actually right for the franchise. And first and foremost is their marketing. I think that marketing for the Monster Hunter World, Iceborne, and Monster Hunter Rise specifically was fantastic. I think that they do a great job getting the word out there that these games are coming out. Whenever they put up a trailer, there's a lot of hype. People love to respond to them positively. Whenever they do social media stuff, they're always doing great. They're doing giveaways. They're engaging with the community. All those things are important. All those things matter. People are definitely attached to the franchise, not just because they're great games, but because the marketing is actually providing people hype. And that's actually the second point that I want to tackle. Hype is at an all-time high when it comes to Monster Hunter. We're nearing the launch of the expansion for Monster Hunter Rise, which is, exciting as it is, but we're also getting closer and closer to the jump of a brand new generation. Monster Hunter Generation 6 or Monster Hunter World 2, whatever they're going to end up calling it is irrelevant. It's going to be a brand new jump. Obviously, with the brand new consoles that are available now, this is not going to be on Switch, presumably, unless, Nintendo does something good, but we don't expect a new console and a good console from them anytime soon. So, this is most likely going to be PS5, Series X, PC kind of stuff. And obviously, visuals and the power of the, new generation consoles is going to help, alleviate some of those, let's say, criticisms people had for Monster Hunter World and most definitely had for Monster Hunter Rise. So, that's always going to help. And not just the marketing doing a great job, but creating hype and making people excited, all that leads to better sales. So obviously the games have been doing fantastic. World and Iceborne were the best-selling games of the franchise and almost, I believe, the best-selling games for Capcom ever as well. So, this is their biggest franchise now. There's no Resident Evil, there's no Mega Man, there's none of that. It is Monster Hunter by a mile. I think it's easily the best-selling, franchise at this point. We also have the situation where Rise did extremely well on just one console, but it's never going to hit those, milestones that World did, or even Iceborne. Sunbreak has potential. It's going to be on PC. It's obviously going to be on Switch, so it has potential to do extremely well, but we'll just have to wait and see. So the last thing that I do want to also give them credit for is that I think that they do a very good job at doing transparency when it comes to the development ideas. I always cover developer interviews, and I think that they're doing a great job when it comes to that. They're providing us with details and information that is important to some people, is not exciting for everyone, but it's always good to know what the background information is when a game is being created. So these are all things that I just expect Capcom when it comes to 2022 to continue to deliver and do a great job on. But there's a couple of things that they definitely are lacking on that I think they could start to do better at the beginning of this year, and hopefully as we lead on to the launch of Sunbreak. And that's the fact that there's basically an issue when it comes to post-launch support for their games. Usually it has been a lot of event quests when it comes to just pretty much every prior generation, even up until Rise, has been a lot of just event quests, a couple of monsters added in here or there, collaborations and stuff like that. Very limited in that scope. I think some people are excited just to get anything new. I am one of those people, but I think others are just expecting more and more and more as we get closer and closer to pretty much a live service type of game, a live service experience. This is something that even the developers have talked about, how Monster Hunter is getting closer to that. Remember that they had Monster Hunter G, that was pretty much their online experience, and we don't have that anymore. So Capcom does realize that one of the ongoing experiences that they had that was exciting and fruitful to them for many years, they no longer have. So it would be interesting to see as those two line meets of like online always active games, live service games, and Monster Hunter getting closer to that, as those interject, Ultimately, what are we gonna see? Like, are they gonna do better post-launch content, more continual support, and things that actually matter to people? You know, more new armors, more new weapons, more new monsters, more new areas, and not necessarily have to wait for an entire new expansion. You know, that's definitely something that they can actually do better on. Then there's the issues of like quality of life changes for the franchise. Now, when it comes to like World and Iceborne, I think they definitely had the biggest changes when it comes to just making things a little bit more easier entry for newcomers. I think that was good for the most part. A lot of people were criticizing it because they made the game a little bit too easy. And then when it comes to Rise, the Silkbind attacks and the wire bugs simply just completely changed the dynamic of combat and just traversal in general. So they made the game even more easier in that regard, and I think that's something that we can all agree. What I don't necessarily think that they're doing a great job on is the fact that things like crossplay, cross progression, and cross saves are not even something that they're considering. Now, let me be very clear about this, because there's a very big misconception out there that people are not necessarily understanding. When Monster Hunter World was ready to come out, people were already talking about having the option to cross-play, cross-progression, and cross-saves between PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. This was a thing that people were already asking for before the game ever came out. And the defenders of Capcom and Monster Hunter officially were pretty much just saying, like, don't worry about it. The next game will take care of that. The next game, whatever the next game is going to be, is going to take care of this. So then Iceborne came out, and guess what? Crossplay, cross progression, and cross saves were not there. Monster Hunter Rise came out. Crossplay, cross progression, cross saves for PC are not going to be there as well. So all those people that said before World even came out that these things were just things that are going to appear for the next game, now they're saying the same thing for Monster Hunter 6 or World 2 or whatever the next big game is going to be called. And they're saying, don't worry about it. If Sunbreak doesn't have any of these features, that's okay. The next one will have them. And I think that's a very big misconception and misunderstanding as to how Capcom actually likes to deal with these things. Now, let's be clear about one thing. I think the online support, I think the online servers that you're actually playing with in Monster Hunter Rise for Nintendo Switch, I think those are actually controlled by Nintendo. I believe they're working with Amazon or AWS or whatever it is. So I think there's something regarding the way that they actually make you connect online. Remember that they were testing that like as the game was ready to come out. Monster Hunter Rise was one of the very first games that was like having like a new way for you to be able to connect online, so they could have like better server, more stability type of stuff. I believe like Rise was one of the very first Switch games that was starting to do that. So if Capcom's limitations for connecting your online experience on Switch to PC is Nintendo, I guess that's understandable, and I can give them that. It's not necessarily their fault, that's Nintendo's fault. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is cross saves. That has nothing to do with you connecting online. That has nothing to do with the way you're actually playing your game. It has to do with what your character or what your experience has been so far in the game, and can you bring that over to PC. Now we know cross-plays, cross-progression, and cross-play are all already features that the Nintendo Switch can do on PC via Steam because other games have already done it. AAA titles and indie games. But when it comes to specifically cross saves, there's many games that have done that, even more so than cross-play and cross-progression. Cross saves is just really easy, I think, for a lot of developers to do if they actually want to offer it, and it has nothing to do with the online experience. Capcom has no real justification for not providing us the option to bring over just even once your character from Switch to PC. There's no excuse whatsoever, but they're not doing it. And the only justification that they have for that is the fact that you perhaps spend 10, 20, 30, 40 bucks on like online packs, music packs, you know, the way your character looks, layered armor and stuff like that, cahoots, whatever it might be, and they don't want to lose out on those sales for PC because Steam's got to get their cut. They also got to sell that again to you, so they don't want to lose out on that. I think that's scummy. I think that's not helpful to anyone. I don't think that's helpful to the community at all. And at the end of the day, Capcom should be doing better. There's no excuse for cross saves. I'm going to give them cross-play, but cross saves is not acceptable. Cross progression is somewhere in between, but again, it really relies on, you know, the save system. And I think that the Switch and PC have already proven that that is something that they can actually do. But that's about all the things that I really wanted to touch upon that I think Capcom can do better for the Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter community in general when it comes to 2022. I think there's a lot of excitement for Sunrise. I think that excitement for Monster Hunter Stories 2 kind of dwindled, as that game, again, single player story, even though it has online, is very much an RPG. So, you know, it was going to be very limited at that. We are expecting some type of expansion for that game at some point, according to the information that we foresaw. But, you know, plans change, you know, COVID and all of that. So we can't really know if they're going to actually do another thing for that game, or they're just going to completely just shift and do something different, because ultimately that game sells might have not necessarily been as great as they would have hoped to be, again, in comparison to Rise and in comparison to World or Iceborne. So I guess that is understandable. But I definitely would love to hear any of your guys' takes on what are you looking for from Capcom this year, and what are your expectations for Sunbreak. And if you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.